trunk, I open up, I sold my soul a good price.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Nerd Talk podcast by thedigitalworm.com. I'm Matt, your host, and I'm here with my good buddy and co-host John. John, say hello.
Hello.
So, as usual, we go through the 10 topics that are the most interesting to us that have come out in the last week. And this week, we're going to start with something that's really interesting to me, and John may have his typical anti-reboot philosophy here. But I just found out that they are doing a Dune reboot. Dune was one of the first major science fiction novels I ever read as a kid. It was one of those books, and one of those books that just kind of became almost an instant cult classic, right? Like, it did not take long for that book to become super popular, and it's still popular with sci-fi nerds today. It's been rebooted a couple of times. But in my opinion, it's never had the budget and the technology to do it well. And apparently Hollywood is thinking now's the time to give it the reboot that it deserves. And I came across this just because I saw an article on We Got This Covered, where they have signed on the cinematographer from Rogue One, the Star Wars movie, to get on board with this Dune reboot. John, what do you... I know your usual opinion on reboots, but I also know you have exceptions. What do you think about a Dune reboot? Is it time?
Well, so Dune is actually maybe if not the most, I don't know the best way to term this. How much do you know about how the original Dune was made? How about that?
The original movie? With like Sting?
Yeah, the actual like production around it and what happened to make that the film it was. How much do you know about that?
Not much. I mean, I've seen the movie a couple of times. I loved it when I was a kid, not as much as the book, obviously, but it's always...
Right. No, the book's one of the best pieces of science fiction, maybe one of the best space operas that's ever happened.
Yeah, I mean, when you read that as like a 10, 12-year-old kid, like it just puts your imagination on another level.
Absolutely. So I don't know that I specifically myself would consider a Dune movie made today to be a reboot or a remake or anything. And the reason behind that, and this is a really, in my opinion, a very interesting story. There's a documentary that outlines this called Jodorowsky's Dune. I believe he's from South America, named Alejandro Jodorowsky, and that's with a J. He wrote and directed. See here, what is that? Oh yeah, El Topo. That's what he's mostly known for. He did surrealism westerns in the 70s, and Dune, because someone handed it to him once and said, I have to make this into a film. I'm going into space in the movies, and we're going to do this, and it's going to be the most far out thing that's ever happened ever. And so he started recruiting people based on the novel. For visual effects, he hired 2 people. The first person he hired was H.R. Geiger before Star Wars. This is half a decade before Star Wars. The person that he hired to storyboard the entire film is a guy named Mobius. Mobius is known in the comic book world as the guy who drew Stan Lee's Silver Surfer epic that I spoke about a couple of weeks ago. He's a French artist, one of the best comic book artists to come from Europe, maybe ever. They storyboarded the entire thing. They changed the story quite a bit, but the actors that they had tabbed for it, Harrison Ford was attached to it at one point. The guy who played Kurtz in Apocalypse Now, his name, Marlon Brando, he was attached to it at one point. The biggest names in Hollywood at the time, everybody wanted to be on this film. Lawyers for the studio that they had paid Jodorowsky a couple of $1 million to get this started, just to write it, basically, just to do pre-production. Started to get wind of the storyboarding And turns out he was basically blocking up for a 5.5 hour long film. Gave him time and gave him time, and eventually they just stopped giving him time. And the lawyers took over. It's one of 2 times in the 70s and 80s where lawyers took over on a science fiction film and changed it very much from what it originally was going to be. Once that happened, all of the creative people that were on the film jumped off. H.R. Geiger jumped off. They actually had contracted Mick Jagger and the entirety of Pink Floyd to make. None of this ever was actually recorded, but they were starting to snowball things. And imagine how that would have sounded. That would have been insane. Part about Dune, the original film, where all this pre-production stuff happened, most of what you see in the Alien films, the first 2 Alien films, are concepts that were originally drawn up for this version of Dune. The monsters in Dune, like the sand monsters, were basically the chest splitter aliens from Alien. He just kept his original art and moved it to another. Also, the guy who did all the action cinematography from the original Star Wars films for Lucas was attached to this to do the same thing for Dune. So if it wasn't for Dune, those movies would never have existed, not in the form that we have.
That's insane. I had no idea.
It's a completely ridiculous story. A lot of this is outlined in that documentary, Jodorowsky's Dune. Some of it I found just doing deeper research. When I saw that documentary a few years ago, I just had to check out. I had to find more. So much to it. And this guy, I believe he's still alive. It was like 6 or 7 years ago when that documentary came out, and he was in his 70s. And basically, it broke his heart to not be able to make this film. He kept the original storyboarding, had it bound into a gigantic hardcover that, to my knowledge, only 1 copy exists, and it was just in his house. Pictures of that in the documentary as well. The story is the movie was going to be probably the biggest production that had ever happened to that date. A lot of the things that you saw in that would have seen in that, you actually see going on in the background in the first couple of Star Wars films. All of that being said, what we ended up with Dune is a movie that was produced by the attorneys for the movie house. They were required to produce a film because they bought a film, and it went past the point of not being able to just scrap it. They had to produce a film. The same thing happened 10 years later with Highlander 2, which is why you have, I don't know if you're familiar with the Highlander franchise, but Highlander 2, which is fans of the Highlander series to never have happened. Highlanders into space aliens for no apparent reason.
Yeah, I wasn't. I've only seen the first Highlander movie, and I wasn't a big fan, so I didn't bother going forward.
The television series from the late 80s and early 90s is exceptional and is worth giving a shot.
I remember watching that on occasion, but I grew up. We grew up, in the late 80s and early 90s, and you had to be a fairly wealthy individual at that point to afford things like satellite cable.
Yeah, I actually watched the whole thing as an adult in college.
Oh, really?
They start, the college I went to, cable was included in your room and board, and USA ran it all the time. So I actually didn't watch it all in the original run. I watched it as someone in my 19, 20, 21 age range. And it held up. That was 10 years after. It held up then. I think it probably holds up pretty good now.
Maybe I'll give it another shot one of these days if I can find it. I'm sure I can probably find it somewhere.
Oh, absolutely.
My personal opinion on the matter is that I think we're at a point in human history where sci-fi and fantasy have just become mainstream. And I think that the technology is definitely out there to where Dune is going, if it's done well, could be one of the best movies of this era. Because
sure, I totally agree.
The story is definitely there. Like the story is one of the best, just not science fiction stories, but just as far as literature is concerned, the story is just fantastic.
Right. It's basically Shakespearean intrigue.
It is, but it's Shakespeare. It's Shakespearean in a way that people who aren't a fan of Shakespeare can still digest it and enjoy it.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's just a lot of political. Honestly, I would prefer it to be a TV show.
What,
There's
like,
just so much potential for interaction there that I would prefer 11 episodes on HBO than a 3-hour film.
see, I'm the opposite. I would pay top dollar to go see that at a really nice theater and just sit there for 3+ hours and just loving every second of it. Next up on the docket, some of you guys have probably heard about this. The Avengers Endgame trailer set a record as the most viewed in history, and how they record this is how many people have viewed the trailer within 24 hours of its release. The previous record holder was the first part of this Avengers movie, Infinity War, had like just shy of 200 and no, it was right at 230 million times in its first day after release. Avengers Endgame had almost 290 million. That's a lot of views. That's almost 300 million views within 24 hours. And, I mean, I'm sure a few people watched it more than once, but still, that's an insane number of views. I thought Infinity War was a good movie. I do not think it was a great movie because obviously it was incomplete. And the biggest issue I had with Avengers Infinity War was that we only got half a movie, yet we paid for a whole one. This is basically us getting to watch the second half of a movie, and I really want to see what happens. The trailer answers a few questions and raises a whole lot more. John, I know you haven't seen the Infinity War movie yet, right?
No, but I read all these comics 20 years ago.
Right.
They weren't new and they weren't new when I read them, but I read them 20 years ago. And there's changes, there's things that are different. What's funny, what's been crazy to me about the whole Avengers Infinity War crossover and everything has been people's refusal on social networking not to spoil things. That's just been completely insane to me.
Oh, well, the internet is a place for trolls.
In the world. Not even that. It's not even that. It's people who I consider to be normal, regular consumers just went on and just started talking about stuff in public, which you typically don't see. I mean, I've never read, probably at this point never will, but I know that Snape kills Dumbledore, and it took me 8 years to hear about that, and most of that was during the social media years. I haven't heard any spoilers about Walking Dead in a very long time, or while Game of Thrones is in season, you don't hear spoilers for that much either. But a day after this was released, everyone knew what the movie was because of people not being able to shut their mouths about it. Now, I take that as people liking it that much, they just felt like they had to talk about it, I guess. But I feel like this second movie is going to be the same. I'm very unsurprised that the most quote-unquote viewed teaser trailer ever. Honestly, it's just the fact that, like, people seem to be surprised when the next big movie is the biggest gross earner again, over and over again. It's like, well, as time goes, these numbers are going to get bigger. This is the snowballing of technology and media. This is what this is. So I think people should probably stop being surprised by these things. This is normal.
I don't disagree with you.
People should be concerned if you don't hear about this happening at least every couple years, if not every 8 months or so. You should probably be concerned about where media is and how people's consumption habits have changed in a negative way for entertainment. That would be the thing that would be worth remarking on, is if this hits that and then it takes 2 whole years for the next thing to hit it, then the changes need to be made.
Well, that's the thing is Disney is just creating just exceptional Marvel content. And they keep setting the bar higher and higher for themselves, and at some point there's got to be a ceiling, right? But so far they have not hit that ceiling. They keep setting the bar higher and they keep meeting it for the most part.
I mean, there are people who thought that after two Spider-Man films and three X-Men films that we would move on from superheroes. It's been 15 years since that, and there's no end in sight. I think this is just part of who we are now. An alien invasion film or a vampire film is part of who we are now. It's been incorporated into our skin.
That's fair. But we've got some serious blockbusters coming out in 2019. Shazam's coming out. Captain Marvel's coming out.
Man, people are gonna hate Shazam. This movie is gonna be awesome. It's gonna be hilarious. People don't realize that there is a comedic aspect superhero that it just gets just completely blushed over by the weirdness between who actually owns the name Captain Marvel. Funny as fuck. It's going to be very good. The suit looks awesome. Awesome. This is going to be good, and you're all going to hate it.
I'll tell you why I think you're right. From a nerd perspective, the very first graphic novel, like I never read Shazam comics as a kid. The very first graphic novel I ever read was Kingdom Come, which was a pretty dark and depressing storyline.
A great story.
It was great, but it was also very dark and depressing. And I don't know if it's too soon to do a spoiler alert on this, but Shazam is definitely, it's just sad how it all happens. But yeah, I remember reading that book.
I've always wanted a Kingdom Come movie. I keep hoping they'll do an animated.
Oh, an animated? Maybe, but definitely not a live action. You'll never see a live action Kingdom Come.
That stuff is so fucking good. And what they could do with that storyline, with the Kingdom Come storyline, is just the whole movie would give you chills. I guarantee it. The whole movie would give you chills. Would be.
I get chills just thinking about reading that book again, but I don't know if I can handle it just because there's just so much going on in that book. Like it was just,
absolutely.
It was insane.
Been darker. They've always been the dark comics people, always, and that is a great example of when they do it really well.
So we've got the Shazam movie coming out, Captain Marvel, we got the Spider-Man sequel, on top of a lot of other big budget movies coming out in 2019. I think 2019 is probably going to see some record-breaking ticket sales as far as movies go.
It's pretty likely. Things I'm actually going to go out and watch, and I never go out and watch films. I know I'm not the only person in the world who's being like this about it. They're getting people that they typically don't get, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when I was younger, I used to go to the movies probably once a month. But, as I got older and I hit my 30s and there was other shit to do and things to do, and more products and services are constantly coming out that cater to homebodies like us. Well, I'm a homebody. You're a homebody depending on the day.
Well, if you ever notice, man, and it didn't used to always be this way, but anymore, the last maybe 15 years or so, a movie theater is always going to be a mall now.
Oh my God, it's terrible.
For the actual worst places in the entire world. There's no reason to ever be inside a mall or near a mall. So putting cinemas beside malls takes a large portion of the population. Well, I guess we'll catch this on Redbox. I guess we'll catch this on Amazon streaming or Google Play Network or whatever it is you like to use for your $3 rental. And there's no purpose to ever be at a mall.
I completely agree.
They get that loss because they refuse to be in other parts of town.
Well, like the very small town I grew up in, our movie theater, we only have one theater. It's very small. It's got 3 screens in it, and it recently was renovated, and it was pretty nice for, town I grew up in only has about 7,000 people and 30,000 in the entire county. But that movie theater, once renovated, was a pretty nice little theater. So there for a while, I was starting to hit up the movies a little bit more just because it was an enjoyable experience because there's no mall in that town. I definitely think that's something the world could use a little bit more of, or small, kind of like mom and pop movie theaters. Seems like there's more information coming out about Mysterio in this Far From Home film. Like, we still don't have a trailer for it. It was shown in Brazil at a comic convention down there, but we still haven't seen it. It's supposed to be out at some point this week or next week, I think, at the latest. And they're really changing up the origin story for Mysterio. John, I know you know way more about this character than I do. I think this is a really interesting take. It looks like it's going to be this friendship turned enemy kind of thing going on.
Pretty obvious that, they're introducing villains that aren't actually in elementals. There's just a generic name. It's pretty obvious that you're going to get an hour and 20 minutes into an almost 2-hour film, and oh, surprise, surprise, he's actually not enemy. He's been playing me the entire time. Feels pretty old, man. Like, I'm gonna hold out hope for a good film, but I don't know, man. We'll see.
So has this news kind of hurt your opinion of your hopefulness for a quality Spider-Man film here with this information that just came out?
I mean, it's still Jake Gyllenhaal. I like the guy a lot. I think that he can make this work, but it's hard to say.
He seems to be pretty excited.
Hopeful. That helps my hopefulness a little bit. That it's something. It's clearly a role the guy wants.
Yeah, like he and Tom Holland both seem to be really interested and really into how this story is coming along.
Absolutely.
Which is a good sign. I don't know if you remember, they made a huge meme out of it where Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck were promoting I think it was Batman versus Superman, and there was this part in the interview where Ben Affleck just kind of like spaces out and kind of like looks like away from everybody and just kind of like into the distance, and he just gets this kind of weird sad look on his face for a minute. Do you remember that?
No.
Damn it. Well, anyway, like it seems like you can tell when actors are actually excited and actors are just doing promotion.
Sure, that makes sense.
And I feel like these actors are both pretty excited about what they're creating or helping to create here. So I'm still fairly hopeful. I mean, it's definitely nothing new as far as tropes go, but it seems interesting because in the comics they were never friends, right? This was never a thing.
No, he always, from 64 on, he always has been completely about destroying Spider-Man. Even before powers, after powers, all of it. He's always been someone who just is really interested in just not only destroying him as a person, but destroying his, making people hate Spider-Man. There's multiple storylines where he uses powers of illusion to rob banks dressed as Spider-Man to discredit him. He didn't even want the money. He just discredit him. And his whole purpose was just say, "Fuck you, Spider-Man."
Which is kind of funny, really.
As good as you say you are. Definitely.
So we talked, just a few minutes ago about DC and its capacity to do darkness really well. We've seen it in the comics. We saw it in the Dark Knight movies. We've seen it in Gotham. And now it looks like we're going to be seeing it in Superman as far as a Superman kind of reimagining, I guess you could say. I don't know if this has ever been done in the comics, but James Gunn is producing a superhero horror movie. It's called Brightburn. and Elizabeth Banks is going to be playing the Martha Kent character. I'm not sure if she's actually going to be named Martha Kent.
No, this is nothing. This is not licensed at all. This has
Okay.
nothing to do with DC or Marvel or anybody. I'm waiting for the cease and desist.
Really?
I watched this ad first time a week ago when it came out. I watched it and I don't repeat things. It bothers me to repeat things. It's not something I'm interested in. I watched this like 14 times. So close to an Elseworlds Superman, which is part of why I'm excited about it, because I think it's gonna be really good. It's basically an Elseworlds Superman without doing any of the licensing. Ironically, the house, the movie house is Sony, which is just hilarious to me.
That is pretty funny.
This is, if they're allowed to release their film, which I think that there is at least a small chance that that's actually not going to happen. Good. I think that there are weird whisperings of like almost like a flash memory of M. Night Shyamalan in some ways. In some of these scenes, it feels like Signs. It feels like Lady in the Water. As far as like the actual like the fleshing out of how these actors and actresses are dealing with each other and the backgrounds is really interesting. It's easy to forget because James Gunn's been doing Marvel stuff ever since Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's been doing a lot of high profile stuff. It's easy to forget James Gunn. He's a trauma guy at heart. You guys are trolls. They're very good at what they do. And the trauma stuff is always going to be there to bother you, to assault your senses in some way, and make you kind of make you think too. So I think that, assuming that there's not some massive lawsuit on the way, the film's going to be great. But this has got nothing. This is not connected to DC at all.
Do you? I feel like if they were gonna C&D it, wouldn't they have done so already? Like, wouldn't they have hit this in like pre-production or at some point during the actual shoot?
Sometimes things fall through the cracks, man. I mean, probably, but when I see it in a theater, that movie I will go see. I will actually make the effort to go to a movie theater and go see that film.
It may not be connected to DC, but I mean, this is clearly a dark Superman horror movie, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it looks amazing.
Yep.
I'm pretty excited about it. Like, you just kind of punched me in the heart a little bit when you said that there could be a C&D. I mean, I hadn't even thought of that. Like, it just never crossed my mind. You know, you always think that something that makes it to this point to where there's an actual legitimate trailer for it, that it's good to go. Like, as a consumer, that's always what you assume, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, I've watched this trailer a couple times, and it definitely pretty exciting. The cast is insane. Like, they got some really good actors attached to this film. I found this on Gizmodo, and the title was "Google Allegedly Snitches Get Stitches," which, of course, who wouldn't click on that, right? But right. They are way more hardcore than I ever thought they were. They are not. I always thought Google was kind of the good guys of the internet for a long time, and I feel like a lot of people think that. But these guys, they are not fucking around when it comes to people leaking information and people blowing whistles. It's something, you know, at the end of the day, I guess Google is a massive corporation at this point, and, you know, massive corporations are massive corporations, and they're going to do what everyone else does that's on their same level. So it shouldn't have surprised me, but it definitely did. John, what did you think about some of the information in this article?
I mean, I don't think any of it's surprising. You know, they're one of the largest companies in the world, right? You know, that they want stuff to stay their stuff. You know, a lot of this is going to be tied into the fact that they're creating a censored search engine for China, and that the amount of revenue potentially gained from that is there's a way to really even know where that's going to go. A billion people in China who currently don't have access to Google, theoretically. I mean, there's always ways around. You know how that works. But theoretically don't have access, who are going to have access. And there are companies within China that are going to pay a lot to the highest search on there. And once you start doing things like censoring your search engines, what's to say you're not going to seed the information based on what you want the people, because that's the next step, and that's why people have an issue with what Google's doing with this. Because the next step is you seed your search results based on what the people in power want people to see. This all ties into the social system that they're putting into place. I sent you a link, yesterday, 2 days ago, that kind of fleshes out more what they're doing on the social rating thing. It's much more than we originally thought.
Yeah, it really is. But
into that.
Totally
gonna tie into
that. Dude, we're already seeing people being afraid of Google. I mean, the CEO just went to Congress, last week? And, it doesn't help that these older politicians just have no idea of how the world works at this point, and the internet, and et cetera. But, they're clearly pretty scared. They're scared. They're afraid of Google and how it's, putting out information, and they're afraid that, Google is going to start.
Well, I think they should be afraid. There's no reason for them not to be.
Well, I agree. I don't. It's weird. I've done some things as far as my professional career go, and some of those things have involved maybe slightly, possibly trying to trick and manipulate Google. And Google isn't. They're a powerful corporation, yes, but there's always going to be ways around certain things. And sure. I think most of the people who are afraid, at least in this country, like what's going on in China, that's a completely different monster, right, than what we've got here. They have the potential to be able to censor and alter their algorithm at will, but why? It's going to be way more work for them to do that. What they do is not easy. To be able to switch it up and start censoring certain content and making some other content less available, that's going to take an insane amount of work.
Yeah, that's why it wasn't immediately available to them. They're having to basically recode the entire world.
Yeah. What's going on in China is definitely a travesty. What we're seeing over there is, oh my God, I don't even have the right words to describe what's going on over there. It's just fucked. And it doesn't look like it's going to get any less fucked or become unfucked anytime soon, right?
Right.
But what's going on over here, it seems like it's, I don't want to say the bad guys, but it seems like it's the people who are fucking this country up that have the biggest problem with what Google is doing and how they're doing it. Next up on the docket, new Godzilla trailer is out, and we know, I know, I was going through, curating content for this week, and I was like, holy shit, there's a lot going on in the movie entertainment world as far as trailers are concerned this week. But I gotta say, this Godzilla movie looks like possibly the best Godzilla movie I've ever seen. Now, I remember watching old Godzilla movies as a kid and thinking they were okay. I was like, it never looked like something that I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I can't wait to watch another Godzilla movie. But with this one, I haven't even watched the last 2 or 3 that have come out because they just look so cheesy. But this one looks pretty fucking legit. And it's also got, uh, the the young girl from Stranger Things in it, and as a Netflix nerd, and everybody has become a Stranger Things fan, so they see this actress, and I feel like even people who weren't previously Godzilla fans are gonna give it a shot thanks to this young
Oh yeah,
actress who's in it.
there's definitely going to be a group of people who watch that film because of Millie Bobby Brown. It's a real thing. I think that if she decides as an adult to continue to do what she's doing as a teenager, has got a very, very nice career ahead of her. She'll be able to do whatever she wants, in my opinion. She's very good at what she does.
Not to get sidetracked too much, but do you think she could be like the next Natalie Portman? Maybe. I don't know if that's a fair comparison.
I just hope for her sake that she's not the next Drew Barrymore.
Well, John, it's kind of hard to argue with that.
Coming from someone who loves Drew Barrymore and wants nothing but good things to happen to Drew Barrymore, and I think she's got a better life than she had when she was a teenager. We've definitely seen through her and through a few others how horrible life can be for someone in Hollywood who is a teenager, who is a girl, and are on top of things. Hopefully this girl's parents are more on top of things. That's my hope for her.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just females though. Like, it seems like pretty much every young actor has a lot of bad things thrown their way. As far as like the fame and the money go, there's like drugs. There's all kinds of shady people looking to take advantage of young and innocent folks who are working hard. We've seen this time and time again. Macaulay Culkin was another example. The Coreys, Feldman and Haim, those kids got all kinds of fucked up. Just in general, it seems like Hollywood is a fairly toxic place for young people. But let's get back on to the trailer. Did you watch the trailer?
Yeah, absolutely. Looks really good. I feel like this follows the Godzilla film theme of encapsulated into itself. You don't have to watch anything else. You just have to know that it's a world where giant monsters sometimes wake up and try to destroy the world. That's all you need to know to watch any Godzilla film ever. And I don't ever consider any Godzilla film to be remake or a reboot because they are each in themselves its own encapsulated thing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you there, and I think that's what might make this film so enjoyable. Is you don't have to be a Godzilla fan to go sit down and think this is a pretty decent use of your time. Like, it's gonna be 2 hours of just straight up awesome, mind-numbing entertainment where monsters are just tearing shit up. And sometimes that's just what we need.
Yeah, and if that's what you're looking for, that's what you're gonna get out of this for sure. What it looks like to me, as I've seen, while I certainly haven't seen every Godzilla film, I think I've probably seen 75% of them, honestly. Mostly as a young adult, as a teenager. And for I can tell just from the one trailer, there actually are 3 classic films from the mid-'70s that they took the information from to make this film. And I think it's probably going to be very good.
I 100% agree. Let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. I thought this was pretty cute, to be honest. NASA offers advice to save Tony Stark in Avengers Endgame. After the trailer, NASA sent out a tweet that said, "Hey Marvel, we heard about Tony Stark. As we know, the first thing you should do is listen in mission control. For Avengers, we have a problem. But if he can't communicate, then we recommend ground teams use all resources to scan the skies for your missing man." And then Marvel replied with, "Appreciate any help you can provide." I thought this was hilarious. Go ahead.
NASA's social networking team is great. They always have been. They definitely don't take themselves too seriously. They definitely are interested in getting people interested in science, and they know that one of the ways to get people interested in something that you care about is to be funny about it. And I think they do an amazing job of doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see government agencies doing this kind of thing very often, and like it kind of caught me off guard because I'll fully admit I don't know much about NASA's social media. I don't. I should. You know what? I'm gonna start today following them on Twitter because it's a tweet like this that makes me think they're worth following. Now, I'm a space nerd. I always look for articles about NASA, but I haven't actually followed them on social media yet. And this was just really neat. I got a real nice old school throwback Viking like chuckle out of it.
No, I think it was just a short little thing that's worth mentioning for a second. I agree.
So, it's little things like that happen on the internet that make me smile and make me glad that the internet is a real thing. So moving on here, I'm going to nerd out a little bit. John, I know you don't give a flying fuck about this article, but you probably give a flying fuck about what it means. Overwatch League has announced the 2019 schedule. All right, so what we're seeing here, they have expanded their prize pool to $5 million. They have expanded from 12 to 20 teams, and they're going to start tinkering around with some home and away games. Guys, esports is becoming more and more real. And not just real, but it's becoming a big deal. We're seeing more and more big name, wealthy personalities getting involved into esports, throwing money at it. And Twitch is just getting more and more popular every single day. And a quick shameless plug here. The Digital Worm does have its own Twitch channel. We stream there several nights a week. We play a variety of games. Right now we're playing Magic and Overwatch quite a bit. We're looking to throw in some Call of Duty soon and maybe some new games when they come out. So in shameless plug. But anyway, this seems like it's a really big deal to me. John, we just saw Magic coming out with a new tournament structure and prize pool with a lot of money involved. I'll let you, I've talked a little bit about the professional Overwatch League, which by the way is just going into its second season. It's just getting into its second season. It's already expanded to 8 teams. Expanded by 8 teams, rather. It's increasing its prize pool. It's on track to becoming a really big deal, and Magic is getting in on the esports action as well. What's your opinion on... I know you think esports growth is a great thing, but as someone who's been involved in Magic for a long time, and up until recently, there really hasn't... there's been money in the game, but you've had to be very, very good. You had to be willing to travel all over the world, and now it looks like they're really starting to throw some money at people who are going to be sitting at home and at their computers and playing Magic that way. So I'll let you take it from here for a bit.
All right, so the Magic thing, there's really a lot to unwrap on this. The announcement went out at basically they're trying to make a foray into quote esports, and so what they've done is they've taken, they're going back down to 4 Pro Tours, and then they're adding with this. All we have, we've got them saying, hey, we're going to put $10 million into support for Magic Pros. This is awesome. They also say, hey, we're going to take the top 32 players in the world. Now, what metric they're going to use for top 32, they haven't told us yet. I'm sure it'll be fairly transparent. Most of the names are not going to surprise anyone, and that's completely fine. But they take top 32 people and give them contracts between what they're actually outright paying them plus kickbacks for tournaments and such are going to equal around $75,000 for the year apiece. Well, 32 people times $1,000, you've got 2.24 million gone. That's out of that 10 million, which is fine, but they probably, in my opinion, should not have made that part of the announcement. the prize support for Grand Prix, which is good. Grand Prix pay out a little deeper now. That's good. They're going to give you tournaments within Arena, which is their new digital platform, to qualify for the Pro Tour, which is good as long as they continue to support Magic Online. A lot of people are afraid that they won't. Those people are wrong. There are already ways through Magic Online to qualify for the Pro Tour. Those aren't going anywhere. This stays. So far, all of this, very good. So bad for anyone who plays Magic in Asia Pacific or Australia. They finally got another Pro Tour and it was just taken away from them again. It didn't even happen. That was announced 3 months ago, and now they're like, "Oh, by the way, guys, just kidding. We're not giving you a Pro Tour anymore." I think that was an oversight. They should not have done that. I don't know if you know, expensive to play Magic in Australia. Everything's almost double the price.
Wait, what?
So, Australia is extremely hard to play Magic in. Because of shipping costs, they don't print any cards down there. Everything has to be shipped there. It costs $8 for a pack of Magic cards.
That's insane.
Right. It takes 2 weeks to ship anything to Australia as far as singles goes. So if you actually have a state shop or even a European shop that's willing to ship cards to you, it's going to take 2 to 3 weeks to get them. There often are tariffs and extra taxes going into Australia because of the type of government structure that they have. So you're actually paying for your cards 2 or 3 different times. Plus the actual shipping rates are insane. And basically no one's tracking works outside their own borders, no matter where you are, especially in the United States. So you get tracking within the country that you buy the cards from. But once it leaves the borders, it's who the hell knows where until it's on your fucking porch. So many barriers to be an Australian Magic player. It's just beyond insane. So I feel bad for those guys for losing their Pro Tour. That's kind of an aside. The overall positive here, as long as they continue to care about non-competitive players with Magic the Gathering. It's easy to get caught up in the tournament scene, as I know well, as many people know well, to the point where you forget 85% of the people who play that game play at their kitchen table or go to Denny's at 2:00 in the morning with their friends to play EDH, or just casually throw stuff together here and there to goof off with their friends. And Magic multiple times throughout its history has forgotten about that player base, and every time they've forgotten about it, they've come close to dying. Not competitive players that buy the cards.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of separates Magic from actual esports is, at its heart, it's just a trading card game. And, it has to remember where it came from if it's going to continue to be successful, for sure. But what about esports in general? It looks like there's a lot of money getting sunk into a variety of esports. As someone who consumes a lot of Twitch content, I'm constantly seeing players play in cash tournaments. Call of Duty is one game that offers a lot of cash tournaments. Overwatch, it doesn't just have the Overwatch Pro League. There's all kinds of independent tournaments and whatnot that semi-pro teams are playing in. There's a lot of money here, John.
If you're willing to put the time in, and if you're able to get a little lucky, we made for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's, we enjoy creating content, but I do not think I will ever be a top-notch gamer boy. Like, I just don't think that's realistic or reasonable. I'm about just creating the content and having a good time, and that's what I do, and that's okay. But
we're old, man.
Well, that's true. We are very old.
But I mean, it's just what it is, man. It's in a lot of ways, a lot of these things are a young person's endeavor. The reflexes that you have to develop at a young age to be able to continue that. You probably have more of a jump on it than I do because maybe you never quit playing video games. I certainly did.
Oh, I quit playing video games
for other
for years.
pursuits.
Like I didn't play. I sold my PlayStation in 2008 along with my last television that I ever owned, and the reason I sold both of those items is because I never used them anymore. I felt like sinking the money into them was a waste of time at that point. But you know, this is before Twitch was a thing, right?
Right.
You know, YouTube wasn't quite a thing yet. Like, I mean, it was out there, it was popular. You know, people watched YouTube stuff, but not like today. Today, YouTube is almost a way of life, right?
For a lot of people, absolutely.
But
It's a big deal.
that stuff wasn't around when I was younger. So to gamers who are a little bit older, the content creation thing and just playing these newer games in general is a much different beast. Like I came up playing MMOs before most people knew what an MMO was. Like I came up playing Ultima Online back in the late 90s. It was a very difficult game and it's still around, and it is still one of the most difficult games to play. You know, it's just much different than what we see. Like I just recently purchased Call of Duty and Overwatch, and the controls on PC are basically the same. Now, when you had games like Ultima Online, you had to, you're pretty much your entire keyboard was, had certain abilities and spells binded to it. So you know you had to memorize, you know, your entire keyboard really.
Yeah, I mean, there were companies that made overlays for that game for keyboards. That's how complicated it was.
And you know, it's definitely much more simplified. And you're right. At this point in gaming, it's less about knowing what's on your keyboard and simply memorizing. It's less about memorizing your spells and actions and stuff like that, and more about your reaction time, which older people like us do not have on that level that younger people do, especially younger people who've been playing video games for, you know, the last 10 years. And it's crazy, like these keyboards come out now, and like I've got one like this. I just bought a gaming PC and I'm looking at the keyboard, and W, A, S, and D are red. Now why are they red? And they're red because W is forward, S is back, A is left, and D is right for almost every PC game that comes out these days.
Absolutely. Makes sense.
Which I found, which kind of blew my mind. But yeah,
which is backwards for how my brain works, because in my brain, up is forward, down is back. Right.
Well, it's crazy because the mouse actually controls the camera.
Yeah.
Which, you know, back in the day when you're playing Ultima Online, it was a 2D game. There was no controlling the camera. You know, you held down right click to run, and then your left click was to, you know, choose a target for a spell or who you were attacking or whatever. That's how I came up. That's why I think getting in today's games has been a bit difficult for me, is just because of that huge difference in what the games are capable of doing at this point. And I think with the games being better, and you taking a leak over there?
Talking about?
I just heard you pouring something.
Pour a glass of water.
So, you know, with the way things are, with the way things are going with games these days, you know, the games are getting better. The companies are doing a better job of putting the games together. And it seems like that's coinciding. You know, it seems like there's a direct correlation between the companies and the quality of the games, and then the amount of money being flooded into the corresponding esports for those games, right? Like it's bonkers. Like, I mean, these games are costing millions. Like, they have movie budgets, right? Like, it's crazy.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and then they turn around and they're just throwing money, and you're like, why is all of this money getting thrown around? And it's a massive industry, and I think esports is probably going to overtake professional sports at some point. Probably in the next, like, 20 to 30 years. I think we're going to see esports being more popular than professional sports.
Well, I mean, like maybe like lacrosse or losing or something. I have a hard time thinking they'll overtake football or baseball.
Oh, baseball's on its way out, dude. Baseball is not nearly as popular. Like if you look at games, like the stands are pretty much empty until you get to like later in the season and the playoffs and whatnot. I think esports has already surpassed the non-major league sports, but it's on its way at some point. I'd say it probably surpass baseball in the next 10 years. Now the NBA, the NFL, like yeah, that's going to be much harder to do, but I definitely think it's possible. I don't see the money stopping for esports. Like I just see it blowing up more and more and more, and you can only do so many things at one time, and at some point I think it's gonna come down to, do I watch a football game or do I watch Twitch to see what's going on in this major esports tournament, and people are gonna start at some point switching over and watching the esports tournament. I could be wrong. That's just my speculation.
I mean, I know that there are individuals who are already making that decision. That's not person, so it's hard for me to kind of care about that stuff. And
fair enough.
I would rather someone, if you're gonna put a gun to my head and force me to watch video games, or I'm going to choose video games every day of the week, for it not to be a first person shooter. But beyond that, yeah, definitely gonna choose video games. I think that a lot of modern games are really interesting. They're very cool. It's just I'm not as into that world as some people, I think.
Yeah.
So many of my friends are that I end up knowing about it. It's just,
according to Deadline.com, who it says new research from the CAA, and a tech firm called Shift 7 show that casting women as leads in films at all budget levels offers a significant box office boost compared with male-led averages. So side-by-side comparison, basically female-led movies are doing better as far as sales go than male-led movies. We live in a world where women are typically paid less, and we even see this in Hollywood. And it's sad that female-led movies are doing better, but the female actresses are not being paid as much as their male counterparts. But we see this all over the world, right? Like there is a gender gap as far as pay, and
it's actually much worse in feature films, though.
What do you mean?
Here's some numbers. This comes from Forbes from about 3 months ago. You know who the best paid actor in the world is right now?
Male actor?
Yeah. Well, the best paid 15 people, 14 of them are men. Who do you think the highest paid actor in the world is right now?
Probably Tom Cruise.
Close. He's number 7.
The Magic Mike guy?
Fucking mind.
Is it the Magic Mike guy?
Mark Wahlberg.
What?
Mark Wahlberg.
Fuck out of here.
68 million, dude. Marky Mark.
If you would have told me 20 years ago that Marky Mark would become the highest paid actor in the country, I would have told you to go fuck yourself.
So he would have as well. He wouldn't have. He would have told you to go fuck yourself too, man. There's no way anyone would ever believe until now. Mark Wahlberg, of all people, and I'll be honest, man, I like the guy. All right, he's not a bad actor.
He plays himself.
He's the best actor in the world. Not close. Absolutely. That's why I like him. That's why I like John Cusack. Too.
He's the Nicolas Cage of 2018. He just plays himself.
$68 million. Number 2, real close to 65, is The Rock.
I can believe that. The Rock has one of those seems man. He is
seems like a real good guy to take a shot with. I'm with you.
He is a very charismatic guy, so that does not surprise me at all.
Some of these people honestly surprise me. Vin Diesel at number 3, 54.5 million.
That's just ridiculous. I'm sorry. That's insane.
Number 4 is going to piss you off. At least it made me angry. I have a hard time believing that Adam Sandler is worth anything to anyone. I've never really liked the guy much.
Oh yeah. I heard about this not too long ago. Do you know why? The
Netflix deal.
Well, not just Netflix. The Hotel Transylvania series. It's a movie. It's a bunch of movies for kids. They're animated. You ever heard of those?
Oh, is that one of his things?
That's his thing. Yeah, that's where he's making all his money.
Well, you got Tom Cruise at number 7, which is not, I'm not surprised to see him in the top 10. He showed up in the early 80s and never really went away. So to have him up in the higher numbers makes a lot of sense. I'm a little surprised not to see George Clooney on the high part of this. This guy has always been super popular. There's a couple of things I've never seen before. But what really bothers me, though, is you got to get to number 15 to find a woman's name, and that's Emma Stone, which, to be really honest with you, I'm sure I've seen something with Emma Stone in it. I actually am drawing a blank as to who the hell she is. I don't know.
She is incredibly talented.
Every name on this list are super talented people. You got Sam Jackson at number 13 with $30.5 million for the year.
All right, so real quick,
the next couple are females. You got 16 and 17, Jennifer Aniston, Jennifer Lawrence. I at least know who those people are. Renowned woman Matt Damon, number 19, 21 million.
So Emma Stone, do you remember that movie from 2007, Superbad?
Yes, I've seen that film.
You have seen it? She played Jules. She's been in Zombieland. She was in the new show Maniac that just came out on Netflix. She,
I like her. Dude, she's a good actress.
She played Gwen Stacy and Amazing Spider-Man.
I really liked her as Gwen Stacy. Yeah, no, I like her a lot. She's very good.
Yeah, she's awesome. But yeah, I'm surprised Jennifer Lawrence is not ahead of her, to be honest. But yeah, so
the 26 million, highest paid woman. Going back to Mark Wahlberg, 68 million.
That's a problem, dude. Like, that's like, I mean, we see the pay gap between genders, and I mean, not just between genders, but also between white people and people of color. Like, it's something we need to fix if we're gonna move forward with our society in any shape or form. We got to fix that. The only way
to do that with entertainment is to vote with your dollars.
You're gonna have to expand on that a little bit.
Entertainment, everything deals with the bottom line of how much money something brings in. So the only way to let entertainment companies know that you care about things like that is to go out and see a female-led film that you typically wouldn't see, and skip the male-led film you typically would go see. You vote with your dollars. So find there's more and more action films with female leads and romantic comedies with male leads. So there's more options than there used to be. Things aren't as pigeonholed as they used to be. Even as recent as 20 years ago, a really good female actress would be pigeonholed into a romantic comedy. That's not as true as it used to be. They're more likely to be able to have whatever roles they want, which is a great step. And there have been a lot of great steps. But apparently, one of those steps has not been the pay equality thing. Now, the general gender gap in pay is around 80 cents on the dollar, about 20% gender gap typically, which, while extremely, is much less of a gap as what you're seeing in Hollywood. So, while it is an overall, it's definitely more of a problem for these women who have to work harder than their male counterparts basically all the time, and deal with a lot more bullshit than their male counterparts 100% of the time, and then they get paid half or less than half than their male counterparts.
Well, yeah,
and sometimes the people who aren't even leads, some of these people are character actors making more than women who are doing leading roles, which you would think would be against contract. All these people are part of the Actors Guild. It's a union.
I'm a guy of average intelligence. Like, I'm not a super genius. I'm very, very average as far as pretty much as far as my brain is concerned. And even I see that this is a serious problem, I just don't know how we fix this problem. You mentioned that you vote with your dollars, but there's got to be a better solution than that. Has to be. And it's not just those three actresses you mentioned on the list. Like, there's a lot of very, very good actresses out there that definitely deserve to be making the same amount of money as their male counterparts. I wish I knew a better way. The studios need to just be like, you know what? Everything is equal across the board. If you're a male lead, you get this. If you're a female lead, you get this. As far as demand goes, because Emma Stone is just as good of an actor as all of the guys on that list. Probably better. Let's face it. Like, Vin Diesel is not going to be doing theater, playing Shakespeare. Doing some sort of Shakespearean role anytime soon or ever. Like, Vin Diesel.
That's not to say he couldn't. I think that Vin Diesel kind of falls into the list of actors who gets typecast into certain things. I think that he is capable of doing things like that.
Do you really?
That he's got more range than we think he does, in my opinion. He just started out with a certain type of film, and that's what pays him the most. And he's interested in making sure he has a good life for the rest of his life, and who can blame him? So he's going to be in the movies he gets cast for.
You know what? That's a good
Another
point.
thing,
that's a fair point.
Number 20 on this list is really interesting to me, and I did not expect this name anywhere near the top of anything. And no offense to the guy, I think he's a great actor, but I don't know him from as many things as I know most of these people from, and that's Jeremy Renner. Rounds out the top 20.
The guy that plays Hawkeye?
Hawkeye is in the top 20 of highest paid actors in Hollywood, which is
what we've actually discussed this very topic on this podcast before, about how we just never really see this guy in a whole lot. Like, he's
apparently
out there.
The few things he's in, he's getting paid bank.
God damn.
This is all from Forbes, man. I got this. They published this in April of this year, so there might be some variance between then and now. But I mean, that's 6-7 months ago. It's just pretty close to being accurate.
Well, my mind is blown. So, what do you think? Like, how, aside from voting with dollars, is there really any other way to close this gap?
More people talking about it. Get someone who has a lot of to say things. That's where you kind of go into stand-up comedians. The stand-up comedians are basically our social barometers in this country. That's just the role that we've given comedy. There are stand-ups who talk about this kind of stuff. I'd like to see. Get somebody on Joe Rogan's podcast talking about that. Now, that would be a good step towards getting people thinking about it, at least. The more people talking about it, the better off everybody's going to be. You just kind of never shut the fuck up, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
You can only ignore it for so long.
It's depressing, is what it is. Like, it's just, I don't know, like... My heart goes out to these hardworking actresses that aren't being paid. Like, they definitely deserve. Like, I come from the school of thought where I think actors making that amount of money is ridiculous. I think no one should be paid that amount of money for that kind of work. But that's my personal opinion on the matter. I do, however, think all women should be paid equally to men. I mean, it should be about the value your role brings and your acting brings.
I think that every job should pay based on how well you do the job you're doing.
Yeah. Performance.
That's the only metric that should matter. The only metric that should matter. It shouldn't matter that you're the boss's cousin. It shouldn't matter that you've been there for 47 years. It shouldn't matter that you have a dick instead of a vagina. It shouldn't matter who you sleep with, what kind of person you want to have sex with, and whether or not you dress up in the furry suit at the end of the day. None of that shit should matter.
Actually, I think the furry suit thing should matter.
Which direction?
I don't know.
Get back to me on that one at a later date. But realistically, the only thing that should matter is how well, at the end of the day, how well did I do my job? And if the answer is better than most people, and if the answer is shittily or not at all, then you should find another fucking line of work.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like we're making slight improvements, but slight improvements aren't really good enough, right? At this point, I mean, it's 2018. Like, what the fuck? Like, people like to say, oh, well, compared to the 60s, compared to the 70s, I don't give a fuck about the 60s and 70s. I don't know jack shit about the 60s except for what I saw in watching Mad Men, you know? So I don't give
none of those comparisons are fair anyway, because they didn't have the type of barriers that have been set up by the people who came of age in the 60s and 70s that
Right.
we have. None of that is a fair comparison to reality at all.
But people
those
still like
can
to
fuck
make
right
it.
off.
Yeah, exactly. They can fuck
Well,
right
sure,
off.
because the numbers look a certain way, but you can also look at at the number of serial killers active in the United States and the average length of men's hair, and those numbers might same times. It doesn't mean that there's correlation and causation are not the same thing. Is what I'm saying. And because it looked a certain way back then and it looks a certain way right now, that the number of variables have changed. Everything is different, so that you really can't make those statements anymore.
Yeah. So the point is, female actors are driving more ticket sales, yet they aren't being equally paid, and that's fucked up. So let's all get out there. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can make positive change happen for these hardworking actresses.
Fuck yeah.
All right, let's move on to our last topic of the day. This one is weird. There's a lot of controversy. Kevin Hart stepped down this week as the Oscars host because some tweets were brought out from his past about some language he used that was super fucked up and inappropriate. And Hart did not respond very well. I mean, this same kind of thing happened to James Gunn, which got him fired from the Guardians of the Galaxy movie.
It's actually not the same thing.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like, they were tweets. At all. The tweets were brought up from the past. Is the correlation? Sure. I'm saying.
But that's where the connection ends.
The subject matter was not the same at all. No.
So James Gunn made a bunch of unfunny jokes.
Yes.
Again, the guy's a trauma guy. Really invested in grossing you out, making you think about stuff you don't want to think about, doing weird things, being fucking strange. That's what the trauma. I don't know if you've ever seen any trauma films. Go watch The Toxic Avenger. Those movies are.
Legend. A new company just bought the rights to that. I just read it. I'll have to send you some links I found. Yeah, I think it was Legendary Entertainment that owns Geek and Sundry. Anyway, that's a little off topic. I'll send you a link to it later.
Basically, what Kevin Hart did was, and I don't know if he was drunk. I like to drink myself. I get it. I don't know what was going on, but there were some people who said some things about not liking him on social media, and he called them some gay slurs. He felt like he's being attacked, so he attacked back. And the way a lot of people attack back, and even still in 2018, the way a lot of people attack back comes off as super fucking homophobic. Correct. And he used some homophobic slurs, words that we choose not to use anymore because people feel bad for who they are, and there's no reason to call people certain things, so we don't do that. And not doing that is where most of us are as a people.
Right.
Now, Kevin Hart is a stand-up comedian. He is the highest paid and most sought-after stand-up comedian in the world right now. He's been that way for about 5 years. He fills places that stand-up comedians aren't supposed to be able to fill. For whatever reason. Talk, no offense, Kevin Hart. Not real big fan of the guy. I don't find him to be overly funny.
I think he's okay, but I
find him to be a little funny. I think he's okay.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, people love the guy, and that's okay. You're allowed to like who you like, and it's great. But his status as being the highest paid comic in the world right now, he's going to fall under more scrutiny than normal. And he for whatever reason, decided to accept the job of being host of the Oscars. Like in and of itself, the Oscars farce, and they have been ever since they've ever existed. It's worse than a popularity contest. It's a popularity contest that most people don't even know how it works. A toxic thing that we should be over as a people. The Oscars are awful. So why he ever even wanted to host it, beyond me. Call him out for saying some shit he shouldn't have said on social networking. And realistically, because he's a stand-up comedian, this is why I bring up the fact he's a stand-up comedian. For whatever reason, different for people who do stand-up than for the rest of us. You can say certain words. It's still okay to call somebody a fag on stage if you are teaching someone something, or if you are a stand-up comedian. That's just how we still are, and people will still laugh at you and they'll still call it funny. Why that's a thing, someone with more sociology than I have could probably break it down for you. I don't have that data, but it is still a thing. You look at comedy, stand-up these days, people are still doing these things. So those words are still in his head as things that are okay to say. Now, he crossed the line and called people those things, and that's a little different, even for a stand-up comedian in 2018. Shouldn't have said the things that he said. My problem is, instead of him saying, what he should have said is one of two things. He either should have stood up for himself and say, I said what I said, and this is what it is. Deal with it. I can at least respect that. Or he could have said, it's changing. I am trying to change with it. And he is. You can tell how his act has changed. He is slowly changing with the times. Could have respected that too. Anything beyond that, in my opinion, is virtue signaling. And when he stepped back the way he is and said, should have done these things. I'm not going to be hosting the Oscars. Hope you guys have a good time, finding a replacement, blah, blah, blah. Feels like virtue signaling to me, and I have a hard time with that. I'm a very liberal person. Most people who know me will tell you I'm up there with the liberals most of the time. Virtue signaling pisses me off.
Now, can you explain to me a little bit about virtue signaling for me? I would look it up, but we're in the middle of a show. I don't really have time to do it.
The flush of virtue signaling is basically figuring out. So, okay, to step back in this particular context, entertainment media in general, people who are actors, people who are singers, songwriters, people who do performing arts, visual arts, more often than not are going to be fairly liberal people. They're going to be more likely to be okay with the things that liberal people are okay with. In my world, to me, that's a positive thing, because I'm also like that. I believe in equality. I believe in not caring who someone goes to bed with. I believe everyone should be treated based on how they really are and what they really do.
Yeah, judged upon character and character alone.
And your acting skills should just be judged based on your acting skills, not whether you like someone of the same gender. Blah blah blah. We've all heard this before. I'm sure you're all tired of it. Virtue signaling happens when you don't necessarily agree with these premises. You know that the people that are going to be judging you based on the type of job you want to do are listening, and you say things and do things that are based on what you know they want to hear. You're trying to say out loud that you have the same virtues as someone so that they will accept you. In a non-entertainment situation, could be you have a boss who hates cigarettes. Chimney, when you're at your job, you talk bad about people who smoke like they're idiots, but in your car there's a carton of Marlboro Reds. That's virtue signaling in a smaller way, in a way that's not necessarily based on real good or bad, but maybe something someone can relate to on a normal basis.
Okay, that's fair. To me, I think that it just looks like this whole thing caught him off guard, and he clearly is not the type of person that reacts well to being attacked. I think that much.
I think he doesn't react well to people questioning him at all.
Well, yeah, all right, that's a better. I was trying to, yeah. All right, you said it much better. Yes, but he definitely looks like he. I mean, it sucks, because all of us. I mean, this guy's only a couple years older than us.
Yeah.
And, 10 years ago, we were much different people. So, in a way, I kind of get it. Like, he was a different person back then. He said some things he shouldn't have said, and he feels bad about it. And I can't help but wonder if maybe people bringing up these old tweets made him feel like a piece of shit, and attacked him with something that made him feel like a piece of shit, which kind of put him on, like, the double defensive, right? Like, so, I mean, in a certain way, I almost feel bad for the guy because, he's trying to be a better person. He's publicly said he's trying to be a better person and evolve as a human being. And then, some people bring up this old tweets and attack him with it. And he just was like, you know what? Fuck all y'all. And that was really a bad way to do it, in my opinion. I think
maybe. I don't know. I think if he had stuck with that, at least I could have respected him a little bit.
According to us,
maybe have a different way of looking at things than most.
According to Cinema Blend, he definitely apologized on Twitter and said all of those things, like I'm stepping down.
No,
like
he did that. That's true.
I apologize to the LGBTQ community. I'm sorry I hurt people. I'm evolving and I want to continue to do so. And he did like a either like an Instagram live or a Facebook live thing as soon as all of this happened. And he was like, I said some shit in my past. I've apologized for it before. I really don't feel the need to apologize for it a second time, being that it was 10 years ago and I already apologized for it once. And,
right.
And, I get all of that. We fuck up. I mean, I have said some terrible things to people over the years. I spent the vast majority of my teens and my 20s being a humongous asshole to pretty much everybody. People that liked me and people that didn't like me. And, I regret a lot of that shit. Like, I wish I hadn't been such a jerk to so many people, both people I know and randoms I'd never seen before and will probably never see again. And, as I've gotten older, I have evolved. I have become someone who has embraced things like empathy and just basic kindness and common courtesy, and it's changed my life for the better. And
good to hear.
I mean, I feel sorry when things like this happen because, I don't feel like he's a bad guy. I just feel like he's somebody who probably just handled this situation in the wrong way.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense to me, sure.
But yeah, you were right, though. There's no excuse for using that kind of language, especially in 2018. And there wasn't a very good excuse for using it back when he used it. I mean, it is what it is.
I think that the bigger story for me is the fact that there are still people who care about the Oscars. I honestly have been known, through time to kind of forget that kind of stuff still exists.
I forget that it exists until I see articles like this.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I've never cared a single time in my life. Watched the movie based on the fact that it won an Oscar here or there. Like realistically, it just does not affect my life, and I don't think it really should affect anyone's life.
Oh, I completely agree. All right. Well, if you don't have anything to add, I think it's going to be time to wrap the show up for today.
Yeah, man. I think we nailed it all.
Yeah, I agree. So this is Matt and John from the Nerd Talk podcast by thedigitalworm.com. Thanks for hanging out. If you like our content, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and like our videos. You guys have a nice day. Thanks for hanging out.